Okay, thank you, everybody. This is the Town of Andover Board of Finance meeting for Wednesday, March 13th. This is the budget workshop meeting. So it's not technically a special meeting in the sense that, yeah, I guess it is a special meeting in the sense that it wasn't originally scheduled with the published calendar. So, hey, Joanne. So just a couple of comments, especially this is for those of you that are newer to the board. Since this is because this is a special meeting, we cannot change the agenda or may have any substantive discussions on anything that's not in the agenda. Now, a lot of what we'll be talking about is related to the budget, and that's a pretty wide open agenda for us. But that just to make that point that if I reel somebody back in, it's, if it's something that really isn't directly related to the agenda, then we have to kind of steer clear of that. But if it's something we need to talk about, it would be fine to add it to the next agenda. And as I think you all know, we're meeting every week from here on out, unless we determine that we really don't need a meeting in any given week, and we'll see how this all goes. So in tonight's, so I don't think it's an issue, even though we're gonna switch around the agenda order of items, so that we can have the discussion of the RAM budget, the presentation, and also talk about the DPW mower, so that Jay and Mr. Collin can head on out and don't have to listen to the rest of our discussion over the budget. Eric, is the DPW thing likely to be real quick, or should we have him go first, or should we have the RAM discussion first? Do you have any thoughts?
I would say probably RAM discussion first.
Okay.
And then Jay, because I don't know whether Jay's will go long or not. It just kind of depends on what the Board of Finance wants to know or hear or think or do.
Okay, that works for me. Okay. So, well, the first thing, order of business, though, is to call the meeting to order, which I've done. We'll go ahead and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. So our next agenda item is public speak. Eric, do you want to see if we have members of the public who want to speak?
As far as I can tell, the only member of the public that's here is Kirsten. Kirsten, if you want to unmute yourself, this is your opportunity to speak.
No, thank you.
Okay. You're all clear, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Okay, then we'll go ahead and move on to the presentation of the RAM proposed budget. Collin, so in your hands. So Eric, are you going to allow him to share, or do you have?
Yep, okay. You should be able to share right now.
I hope. Well, first of all, good evening, everybody. Dr. Collin McNamara, Superintendent for Regional School District 8. Are you able to see the PowerPoint slideshow?
We're seeing your screen.
Right now, we're seeing your background. We're seeing everything.
Seeing your screen, yeah. So if you run slideshow, if you click share window, you should work out that way.
Yeah, I'm going to try to. This is where technical. This is why I shared it with Eric, just in case I had issues. So
yeah, if you can't, I can pull up the presentation. You could just tell me when to click forward.
Yeah, Eric, why don't you go ahead and do that? I apologize. That probably would be the easiest thing for us to do.
Yeah.
So you've got it then in front of you now, Eric. I want to make sure that we're good to go.
Yeah, we're seeing it.
Yeah, all right. You should be seeing it now.
Great. Well, wonderful. I appreciate it. Sorry for the confusion. I'm used to Google Meets because that's what we use in the world of education. So once we get outside of Google Meets, it gets a little, it can get a little wonky for me. I apologize, but I appreciate your flexibility. So Again, good evening, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, Colin McNamara, Superintendent for Regional School District 8. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present the proposed administrative budget for the 24-25 fiscal year to members of the Andover community. I want to make sure that I acknowledge and thank Andover Andover citizens who serve as members of the Regional 8 Board of Education members. Kirsten Erlinson is one of those people, and I believe she's here. So thank you, Kirsten, for being here and being supportive, as well as Scott Soyette. Appreciate the work that they do for the district. And I think it's also important to point out and mention, I appreciate the work that you all do as elected officials for the town of Andover to support the community. Eric, if you can go to the next slide, it'd be great, please.
You got it.
Great, thanks. So the proposed budget for 24-25 is currently $31,960,459 and represents an overall budget increase of 2.64%. This amount is a combination of a net operating budget of $31,462,040 and a capital budget of $498,419. At this time, I will tell you that we are anticipating some changes in a good way, reductions to the operating budget. However, these changes have yet to be discussed with the Region 8 board, and I am reluctant to share the specific information without first communicating with them about those changes. We will be having a board meeting on this coming Monday night where some discussion around the budget will be had. And I will certainly make Mr. Anderson know about any changes that have been made, to the Region 8 budget. And I know that he will share those changes with you. So what I'm sharing with you tonight is where we are at this moment in time. But again, we're looking at some changes to the good in the sense of I'm anticipating being able to reduce that current budget ask. Next one, Eric, please. Andover's member town levy for 24-25 is based on the percentage of Andover students that are enrolled at RAM currently. And currently that percentage is 13.34%. Based on this percentage, Andover would realize a decrease of $189,996 for the operating budget and a decrease of $11,127 for the capital budget over the current year's budget, for a total levy decrease of $201,123. Next slide, please. So the audit of the 22-23 budget for Region 8 was completed and accepted by the board in our February meeting. The board voted to allocate the maximum allowable amount of the surplus to the district's capital non-recurring account, which is 2% of the total operating budget for last fiscal year. And that equals a dollar amount of $609,720. These funds have been enabling and will continue to enable the district to address longstanding issues related to our athletic fields. The additional $830,212 in surplus is being allocated as a credit offset for each town levy for next school year. And in total, this credit amount for Andover is $119,800, making the town levies decrease for next year a total of $320,923,000. So certainly good news for Andover. Next slide, please, Eric. So there are several drivers which are having an impact to increase the proposed budget for Region 8 for next over the current years, for next year over the current years. And those budget drivers include things such as health insurance. I'm sure that you're talking about this already at the local level. Currently, we are budgeting for a 16.5% increase. As I'm sure that you know, Andover is a part of the insurance consortium that RAM is a part of as well. And so the decision as far as the increase for insurance is made as a part of this larger consortium. Right now it's at 16.5%. We actually have a meeting of the insurance consortium tomorrow where the final number will be established for next year. So that number could change If a change is made, we'll know it by tomorrow morning around probably 11 o'clock in the morning. But that is certainly right now at an increase, because our change from last year to our current year was a 2.5% increase. So that is a 16.5% increase, is fairly substantial. We also have salary increases, which are affecting our budget for next year. We have special education outplacements, special education transportation. We have software costs, utility costs, instructional supplies, and general supply costs as well. Those are all things that are associated, I would say, with general inflation. Next slide, please, Eric, if you would, please. So the proposed operating budget also includes some significant reductions. The notable reductions include primarily the principal and interest on our bond payment. As I'm sure you all know, the high school was built approximately 20 years ago, and we are nearing the end of our bond payments for the high school renovation. And that was done, which was done through bonding. For next fiscal year, the total principal and interest payment will be $421,413, which is a decrease of approximately $655,000 from the current fiscal year. And we're going to stay at that payment amount of around $420,000 until the bonding is paid off at the end of the 26-27 fiscal year. So we're nearing the end of the bonding period, which is obviously good news. So it's a substantial decrease there. We're also seeing a decrease in general education transportation, which is being reduced. We're seeing a decrease in purchased and professional services. And the other significant driver for our decreases is the fact that we're kind of flatlining with our financing cycle for our district Chromebook and technology. So about 4 years ago, we put a cycle into place where we knew that at the end of this cycle, we would be on a relatively steady funding. And so we're seeing a decrease of about $60,000, and it should stay relatively steady because of that stabilization plan that we put into place 4 years ago. Next slide, please, Eric. So this chart shows the percentage distribution of the proposed budget by each object category in relation to the total budget. And as you can see, and certainly not surprising, I'm sure to you all, 71% of the proposed operating budget is allocated to employee salaries and benefits. And these are fixed costs associated with staffing our schools. Next slide, please. So the funds proposed for next year's capital budget represent really a small percent of the actual needs, which right now is around $3,318,000 of total identified projects. The proposed capital budget for next year is $498,419, which is a decrease of about $42,000 than our current year's capital budget. The proposed budget will enable the district to improve our safety and security posture, continue to address issues related to the maintenance of our buildings, exterior, and replace aging furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And the development of the capital budget was a collaborative effort between district administration and members of the facilities and finance subcommittees. Next slide, please, Eric. So this table provides a history of budget increases for Region 8. And as you can see, the district has a demonstrated history of fiscal responsibility. School districts across the state and country are contending with rising costs and challenging economic times. And I'm pleased that the proposed budget increase where we currently are at a 2.64 is reasonable when you consider where we currently are from an economic standpoint as a country. Next slide, please, Eric. So this table provides the per pupil expenditure for secondary school districts, regional school districts. Region 8's PPE increased slightly from last year. However, we do continue to provide a high quality educational experience for our students at a cost that is amongst the lowest in the state for regional secondary school districts. Next slide, please, Eric. So it's important to talk about enrollment because it does have an impact on our budgeting process. This graph shows the district's October 1, 2023 enrollment since 2015, as well as our projected enrollment through the 33-34 school year. So we always project about 10 years out. For the October 23 report to the state, district enrollment was 1,188. And as you can see, the current projections do indicate that enrollment will decrease slightly through the 25-26 school year before increasing to numbers exceeding our current enrollment in 4 years. Next slide, please, Eric. The October 1st, 23 enrollment at RAM Middle School was 369 students. Enrollment at the middle school is projected to remain steady for the next 3 years before increasing in the 27-28 school year. Next slide. We're going to talk about the high school. So the high school enrollment on October 1, 2023 was 779 students. High school enrollment is projected to experience a slight decrease through the 26-27 school year before eventually increasing and eventually surpassing our current enrollment. Next slide, please, Eric. So this is our pre-K to grade 6 projected enrollment, and it's important to note that over the next 10 years, the elementary districts feeding into RAM are projected to increase their combined enrollment by over 300 students. And so this graph shows those projections of the combined elementary districts of Andover, Hebron, and Marlboro through the 2033-2034 school year. The projected enrollment growth at the elementary school districts that feed into RAM indicate that RAM enrollment will continue to grow beyond our current projections. And what I mean by that is, as you can see, the elementary enrollments are going up. And so that means that growth trend is going to continue to go into the middle school and high school over the next several years, even beyond our current projections. Next slide, please, Eric. So in closing, I would just say the proposed administrative budget reflects the efforts of the district and school administration, department coordinators, other staff, and the Board of Education to put forth a responsible budget that maintains the high quality education that you all have come to expect and appreciate from the RAM. And we're proud to be able to provide that to members of the Region 8 community. The budget is a result of several months of collaboration between school and district administrators, department coordinators, and staff, and is intended to provide the board, you all as Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen members and the general public with a clear understanding of the district's programs and priorities. The administration and staff of the district are grateful to the support of our board, the local communities of Andover, Hebron, and Marlboro, and the work that you do to help ensure our students are receiving high quality education, which prepares them to make meaningful contributions to society. Our Board of Education is scheduled to meet on April 1st to adopt the 2024-2025 budget. And then obviously it would go to referendum in May. That concludes my presentation, and I am certainly happy to try to answer any questions that members of this group have for me.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I just want to make a couple of comments, just prefacing any questions from the Board of Finance. I think most of you are aware that the RAM budget is both developed and voted on, and they're both voted on by the Board of the RAM Board of Education. It's also voted on publicly, separate from the town budget. So it is a completely separate process. Clearly, it affects the taxpayers, the town of Andover. So we appreciate the opportunity to hear about it a little bit and understand it. What this also does for us, when we look at projections, they help us understand what the future impacts may be. And I don't, Colin didn't have it in his presentation, but I understand that the percentages of Andover students is expected to rise too in some of the years coming. So that's going to have an impact on our budget as well. So just something to keep in mind. But it is a separate process from our budgeting thing. It doesn't have any direct impact on our budget. It does have an impact in our mill rate where we collect the taxes from the town taxpayers. So that's how it goes here. So if you have any questions about that, we can certainly talk about it. So does anybody have any questions or comments for Colin? Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, actually, it's something you brought up, but I wanted to drill down on it if we could. The enrollment projections and Andover's share thereof. it was useful to see that, we got about 4 or 5 years here where it's going to either drop or stay level before we get back above the current enrollment. But the composition of that enrollment, of course, affects our budget pretty dramatically this year in a positive way.
Mhm.
Can you, I don't know if you have the figures handy or can provide them later, but it would be cool if we had a projection for our share in those years as well.
Yeah, so it's a really great question. I don't have those numbers at hand, Rob, but what I can certainly do is make a note to share the Andover specific projections with Eric, and then he can share those with you all as well. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
And,
That'd be
and
helpful.
you characterize it really accurately, right? So I think this is the second year in a row where the trend is beneficial to the town of Andover, right? So declining Andover enrollment, which is leading to the fact that you're seeing a decrease in your member town levy, a fairly significant decrease to your member town levy. I'd have to dig up a report that we received from NESDEC, which is who we utilize for our enrollment projections, and I'm happy to provide that report to Eric. I'll just share the entire report with Eric.
Thank you very much.
Of course.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been concerning with me is that, although we're down to, under 14% as a percentage of the total levy, when you look at our pre-K through 12 total enrollment, it's 16.9%, which is another way of saying our pre-K through 6 is greater as a percentage than kind of the mean, which has been about 16.5%. So you can kind of assume our levy is going to go up into the 17 to 18% range at some point when that equals out. So that's just something that we as a town need to be aware of.
Bill, saw your hand
Yeah,
up.
it just seems like, and maybe I don't understand this, but at the same time, our enrollments will start going up. We'll also be paying off the bonds, so that will help offset and not make such an impact on us as the enrollment goes up.
Yeah, I can't really speak to that. I think that, you're right. We're looking at finishing, payments in the bond over the next, as I said, I think, what did I say, 26, 27 year, 25, 26 year?
26, 27.
Yeah. So the other thing that I would say though is Andover is not alone. And I'm not saying this to provide solace or comfort, right? I mean, you guys are spot on. Your enrollment projections are going to go up. The thing that I would say though is, the other elementary districts enrollments are anticipated to go up as well, right? So it's not like Hebron and Marlborough are going to flatline and stay relatively steady, and Andover is going to see a spike. We're seeing a spike in enrollment. If I'm remembering what the projections are correctly, we're seeing a spike in enrollment in all 3 of the elementary districts. So in totality, so I don't know how that's going to affect your percentage specifically. I think it's going to be hard to pin that down and say, oh, well, here's exactly kind of what the trend is going to be from a percentage standpoint.
Sure.
Other questions? Comments? Joanne?
I just have one quick question, kind of a follow-up to a question I asked last year, so I figured now is my opportunity. Just, were you able to bring in any of the diversity and equity training and the PD line that we talked about this year? And then are you moving forward with that next year?
Sure. That's a great question. And, it's funny, I did a presentation. I did this exact same presentation with Hebron last night, and that same question was posed. And the specific, what I would say from an answer is going to be in general. I don't have dollars budgeted specifically for equity and inclusion, professional development, or programming for students. I have money budgeted for professional development for faculty and staff. And certainly we are utilizing some of our professional development time to provide PD for staff related to, providing, increasing our staff's ability to be culturally responsive. The reality is that our our communities are growing more diverse. We're not seeing jumps in percentages of 10 and 15 and 20%, but we are seeing increases in the number of diverse students and families that we're serving in the RAM community. And so what we are targeting our professional development on with staff is we're spending a lot of time talking about how we can make sure that we are prepared to be to have culturally responsive pedagogy and conversations with our students, because we know that that diversity is increasing in the district. So it is definitely something that we're working towards doing. And that is, I would say that's a marathon, not a sprint.
I know that I posed it last year because I know there was a line item where you had said, well, we plan, we put the dollar amount in and then we'll have the programs. So do you think you had some programs in this current year budget that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So
Okay.
we have yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. I know I asked it to you last year, so I figured let's go again. Thanks.
Great question.
Other questions for Colin? Louise, that you're raising your hand?
Yeah, I'm curious if the increase in population of the elementary kids, are you seeing, or is there a way that if there's going to be an increase in the social services outplacement in the near future because of the increase?
Are you talking special education outplacement?
Special education, yes.
Yeah, so we collaborate very closely with our special education departments. In our district, we communicate and collaborate on a regular basis with the elementary district. So we'll talk with the special ed directors in Hebron, Andover, and Marlboro, or the administrators if there's not a specific special ed. So we're very fortunate that we take the students that are at the elementary level who are currently outplaced, and we basically anticipate that they're going to remain outplaced for the following year, right? And so there are opportunities for us to realize savings. There could be students that are currently outplaced right now, either at the elementary schools that might feed into RAM, or current RAM students that are currently outplaced. And through the IEP process or the PPT process, those students could potentially return to RAM, right? And which is what we are really legally obligated to try to do. Our responsibility for special education students is to educate them in what's known as the least restrictive environment, which means as close as possible to a regular education experience as any non-disabled peer. And part of that surplus that I talked about, I mentioned that we had a surplus that, again, is really helping out the three towns with that credit offset. A part of that surplus is a result of students that have been able to return to RAM that had been outplaced, and we brought them back into district. And we're always working to do that, but we do budget accordingly for special education outplacements when kids we know at the elementary level are going to be aging up and matriculating into the secondary schools.
Thank you.
Sure, of course.
Okay, anything else for Colin? Okay, I guess that'll do it. So thank you very much for your presentation, and good luck in the end of the school year and the budget season. So.
Well, I just want to say that I appreciate everybody giving me the opportunity to come and chat with you. Again, I appreciate Kirsten being here to support as a member of the Region 8 Public Schools Board of Education. I wish you all the best of luck. I know that the budget process is not an easy one, and you have a big task in front of you, but I appreciate your support for the Andover students that attend RAM and all the students that attend RAM. I wish you the best of luck with everything, and have a great night.
Thanks. Appreciate it,
Colin.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Okay, so we will go ahead on to our next agenda item. This is to discuss the DPW mower. Eric, do you want to lead in for open that one up?
Sure. So at this point, the request for both a DPW mower and a request for a new equipment trailer has been presented and accepted by CIP, and the Board of Selectmen agreed with it also. So now it's coming to you as a Board of Finance. There is money in the current budget to outright purchase the trailer, so that's presumably what we would do. And then the other item, which is the mower, exceeds what, what we have available in the Public Works Capital Equipment Fund. So we would be looking at a purchase or a lease arrangement for that. And that would require a town meeting. So prior to it going to a town meeting, the Board of Finance would have to agree in concept with financing a piece of equipment and recommend that to a town meeting, as the Board of Selectmen did. So it's really kind of in your court. The information was in your packet. Jay Tuttle can probably explain it far better than I. So that's kind of where we're at, if that makes sense.
Yep. So Jay, I guess we'll hand it over to you. All yours.
All right. Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As Eric said, the more it's in your packet, and I'll bring it up here if I can share it on your screen here. And if oh, that's not the one. Hang on. Correspondence. Okay. And I got to click on share. All right. Does everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. And everything was in your packet. Now,
Yep.
bear in mind what this packet here, I sent you both the the roadside mower and the trailer. So part of the financing that's explained in this includes the trailer, but we would back that out of this. So when we went to get quotes on the roadside mower, we're also looking for some financing. This company was recommended by the dealership. They're an independent, obviously, separate, and they are Sourcewell approved. So I reached out to this gentleman and talked to him about it. And the good thing about this is this company will allow us to, if everything is approved, they will allow the town to take possession of the piece of equipment prior to any payments. So when money becomes available come July 1, that would be the time for the first payment. Because it helps the municipalities secure equipment when equipment is available. So this is the finance option for both pieces. And for the single, I was not aware about the other, so I don't have that dollar amount at the moment. But it's somewhere, I'd have to look it back up. It's around $47,000 instead of the $56,000 annual payment for the roadside mower, if you guys elect to do this option. Lease payments.
You mean backing out the trailer cost?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the trailer cost is around $10,000.
So like
for
50,
5 years.
Yeah.
What's that?
So like 50 total, right? 5 years of 10.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that we can't finance them both. It's really up to the Board of Finance, what you want to do. Ultimately, because it's a future obligation, even though we would have the money for the first payment now, we would need to go to public meeting to approve, because the Board of Finance can't independently approve a finance. If we were purchasing it outright and we had the money currently in the budget, you could approve it. All three boards would have blessed it. We could go out and, I could sign the contract for it tomorrow. But since it's a finance arrangement, that would have to go back to that does have to go to town meeting for final approval.
Okay.
Eric, can you remind me, what did the Board of Selectmen decide on that? Because like you said, I know they asked you all to find the money for to take part of it out, like you said, the trailer, and just finance the mower, right?
So I would actually have to look back when
I listened to that and I knew something got taken out and
So we took out and separated two smaller pieces of equipment. That was Jay presented essentially a request for 4 pieces of equipment. But 2 of them were small enough that they were below the capitalization threshold. So the Board of Selectmen agreed, and we just purchased those outright with funds that we had, which left the trailer and the roadside mower.
Okay.
So what you're basically proposing is to purchase the trailer and finance the mower. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's
well, I mean, theoretically, we could do either. We could finance them both, or we could purchase the equipment trailer now outright and finance the roadside mower, presuming that we don't have to make the first payment till July. Both of those options would work.
Okay. Can I ask Jay a question about the trailer?
Yep.
And this is just from listening to the presentation at when he presented to the Board of Selectmen. I thought he was saying, I know they have a trailer now that, and I listened to the whole thing and I understand the needing to upgrade the equipment, but one of the points was you said that you can only use the present trailer with continuing to make repairs in town. What would be the big need? I was sitting there thinking, because of course I can just listen. What is the big need to go out of town with this trailer all the time?
Well, if we have a breakdown with a piece of equipment that we have to take to a dealership for repair, like if we got to take the backhoe, the skid steer, anything that another truck actually, anything that if we can't drive it there, we have to tow it there. Or we have to hire somebody to come in and trailer it. So, and the other thing is if we need to pick up supplies, catch basin supplies, drainage, concrete products, we frequently go out of town and buy, sometimes we just get 1 or 2, catch basins. We can throw it in the back of a truck. But if we want to get a whole load, supplies, basins, basin tops, different concrete products, we can put it on the trailer.
Yeah, if I didn't know, I just wanted to ask that question. That makes total sense. So you go out of town a lot with the trailer.
When we need to, yes.
Yeah.
And currently we can't. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you look at the pictures, you can see there's a lot of items needing repair or replacement. Mowers or their trailers in bad shape. So that happens. Is there if we looked at maybe recovery resale or like a used sale value that we can recover if we sell the used equipment?
Yeah, so like 10 to 20. It's in there, right?
Yeah, on the mower itself. Well, look, before we get to that part, so one of the things that if this passes and is accepted, and we're able to capitalize on a unit that's in stock now, there's savings, obviously, and that's in the pack. It's explained.
Okay.
From one to the next. But as far as resale value, I mean, I'm just going to skip through this unless you guys have some questions on the different mowers. So as far as the resale value on this, we're figuring somewhere around $15,000 to $20,000. 10 to 20.
There it is.
Yep.
10 to 20.
The dealership doesn't want to do a trade-in on it. They really wouldn't offer us that much on it. But the machine, if we did some looking around and checking what's out on the market right now, as far as auction houses and who's got what for sale, you look things up on the internet. The machine right now in itself, yep, it's old, it's tired, it's still a working machine. If we're going to continue to use this machine and maintain it, we're going to start putting some real money into it. And at that point, you're going to own it for that much longer. And at some point, it's worth nothing. And right now it still has some value to it. And I think that's a better, we get some savings on a machine right now and newer machine, and we can also capitalize on having some value in this and try to recover some funds and put those back to capital equipment if the town so chooses. And as far as the trailer is concerned, $1,000, $2,000. It's old. It's kind of be teeter-tottering whether somebody will buy it, give us a little money, or we'll get just as much for scrap, unfortunately.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
As regarding leasing versus buying. So with the leasing option, part of the attraction is that we can get it now, even though we don't have the budget money set aside. If we wanted to buy it outright, if we decided, look, you know what we're going to do? We're going to rework the budget. We're going to stick a bunch of money in the Public Works Equipment Fund and buy it outright for 240 grand. Would we be able to do that and take possession right away, or does that foreclose that option because it's a different purchase process?
I don't know if the dealer would do that.
That's what I was kind of figuring, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I would, because the dealer is going to get secure payment from the finance company.
Right.
So, as far as I honestly don't know how that
they're not
would work.
taking our word for it. They're getting a finance deal for a bank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This company, that NCL, they do whole bundle packages. They can, like, they're taking the roadside mower from one piece of equipment, one company, and they'll take the trailer from another company and bundle it, and they'll take care of both parties. They can, we could throw a truck in there. We could throw something, that's how that financing company works. They specialize working with municipalities and governmental agencies.
Jay, so this on your list of priorities that you would like to have purchased, do you see this mower? I mean, I'm only going from some of the questions that were asked at the BOS, not that I'm an expert. This is high on your list as you're just trying to, keep moving forward. Yeah.
Yep. This was part of the modernization plan.
Mm-hmm.
And does anybody have any questions on this? I can go to that plan if you want to, on this packet.
For my question, yeah, I think I'm in the bigger picture mode in my head. I understand, and I appreciate you always coming to the meetings and speaking to it. So I guess when it gets down to when we're deciding overall big picture, you're here tonight, so at least we're hearing, yes, this is very important to you. Like this is something, and I get that. No, that's all I need for this is for prioritizing later on.
Yeah, so this is part of the modernization plan. We're probably, I'd have to look back at it again when we put it together. Eric initiated it, and then I tweaked it a little bit, and then we worked on it again together. But I think we're a year in advance right now.
Mm-hmm.
As far as what the original plan was, we're right at that year mark, one side or the other, as far as, and it's time. It's an opportunity thing. It's time. We're starting to put a lot of money in it. last year we wanted to put, if you recall, we wanted to put a new mower head on this machine. And we had some other equipment needs that some major expenses. We delayed that, and we fixed up. And actually, we're looking at it right now. This arbor right here needs replacement, and this arbor alone is about $7,000. But the unit itself is also fatigued, and we've had to do welding, a lot of welding on it over the years. So just this mower head is about $22,000 ish. So that's about what we were going to spend last year. I think we $25,000 we up to, but we didn't do that. We needed that money for some truck repairs and some other things. So we delayed it. And now here we are where this other machine became available, some decent savings. So that's one of the reasons why I'm trying to, you know, I think it's a good point to take care of everything.
Thank you. I like the idea of financing it and spreading it out. Yeah.
Other questions for Jay? Comments? So, you know, just as a procedural matter, I think Eric explained it clearly. If we choose to finance this, which I think would be the logical thing for us to do, we would be passing this on for a town vote, a town meeting. So that's all that our vote doesn't commit the town to it. It basically just passes it on to the town residents to make their decision on this option. It does commit us to us once we have that approval, so we don't want to take it lightly. But you know, my own personal perspective is that, as Jay said, this is kind of part of the upgrade plan. This thing clearly needs to be replaced at some point sooner rather than later. And I get the sense, you know, the data is there about the maintenance costs and stuff. You can see that in the packet. We're starting to throw good money after bad at some point, so it's probably time. Seems like it's a reasonable payment plan to me. So that's my take. Any other comments?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that if you looked on page 52 of the packet, one of the things shown there was the original equipment modernization plan we put forth in 2018 and got everybody to buy into. And now we're basically 6 years into that plan. And, you know, we've been able to kind of stay ahead of the curve. But one of the things that's been hurting us is the costs for equipment has gone up really, really dramatically over the last 5 years. But if you look at it, there's some pieces of equipment we purchased a little later than we originally forecasted, and some things we purchased a little bit earlier. We were fortunate in the 2018, 19, 20 era where we had unexpended fund balance that was fairly significant that we could use to jumpstart the plan, and we did. So now we're into the mode of just, you know, we're not buying stuff as fast, and we're spacing it out more, and we're having to finance it to stay within the capital allotment of $125,000 a year. So that's kind of what we're on as far as the plan goes. And since a lot of the equipment we're talking about buying is more expensive than that, you know, plow trucks now being, you know, $260,000, $270,000 a pop,
And
you
they're
know,
only
we're
going
having
up.
to use the finance route.
Yeah, they're not going to go down. That's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Further comments or discussion?
Mark, I was just going to ask at this point after hearing it, so this evening we could
Matt DeRosier.
We know.
That's okay. Go ahead.
We know that there's needs to be a town meeting. There's a lot of things that the town needs to be deciding on, as I kind of put in that email to you guys today. I mean, we know that. I mean, it's just kind of, so should we motion to? Are we at a point that we would do that tonight to motion it?
Yeah, I think if there's no further discussion or question, the next point would be we either move on to the next agenda item or somebody makes a motion one way, you know, to approve the purchase and finance option.
Just a quick question about that motion. Since
Oh.
the figures we have for the financing option include the trailer, and we know roughly is 47,000 or something like that would be the payment for just the mower itself. Do we need that specific? Can we leave that vague and just say in the motion, or is that a problem? You know what I mean? If we're, because my understanding is what we're doing here is we're going to buy the trailer and lease the equipment.
Well,
And if
so
we don't have the
that's
exact
one of
figure,
the
what do we
options.
budget?
It's kind of dependent on you as a board of finance. Given that the lease company will allow us to wait till July to make the first payment, we can do either. We can take either approach. We can buy the trailer outright and just finance the mower, or we can finance them both as a package. And I don't have strong feelings either way.
I mean, it simplifies it from my standpoint if we lease the whole thing, if nothing other than we have the specific numbers for that to put in the motion, right?
Yeah, we don't need, but the trailer, if we decide to purchase, it would not be a town meeting item, correct, Eric? That would
Right.
just be a purchase, right?
Because it's in the fund already, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, somebody can make a motion to do either way.
I was gonna
I'd like
say,
to-
what? Oh, sorry. What if
Oh,
it goes to town meeting and they say no? We still need the trailer, right? So I don't know.
Well, if they said no, I mean, the Board of Finance could still later authorize the purchase of
trailer.
the trailer, because
Okay.
that's within your purview.
Okay.
And it's in the fund. We have the fund balance to do it.
Yeah, it's not really clear to me what the cost of financing is, but
Yeah,
you know,
I don't see
it's
that.
not
Do
a
we have
huge
an
amount of
interest rate
money,
on
and
it?
it's over 5 years, so I don't think there's going to be a huge material impact for the town by financing it.
If you give me a second, I can look it up quick. It's just gonna have to.
Mark, from your experience, would going out to the town for a referendum, is it something that would be easier to pass if it was a lower amount? In other words, just buying the mower instead of a mower and the trailer. I mean, is it going to be easier for people to say, yeah, well, let's just go ahead and spend the money? I hate to see it get shot down.
I don't think there's really any. I don't think I've been, since I've lived in town 6-7 years. I don't think there's been a town meeting where a piece of capital equipment has not been approved.
Okay.
So I don't really have a perception of what would be more palatable to the town. Joanne?
Just quick follow-up question, because I really feel like the Board of Selectmen was directing their wants and needs of how this is handled in passing it forward. But I guess we're the final thing. But they did have a definite direct way they were hoping it would get handled. I know Eric and Jay were both at that meeting. I listened to the whole thing. How much is the total for the trailer, Eric or Jay?
Depends on which trailer, but it's like 40,000 roughly for the trailer.
It used to be roughly 40.
Yeah, I feel like they were hoping that got bought outright. That was their plan, because they didn't want the financing. They knew with the equipment, with our new, and I'm just sharing with all of you, because I think you all should hear thoughts of what everybody was hoping for too. They know that we have the plow trucks coming up. We're committed to different things. There's the fire rescue thing that's coming in. I know that's a separate budget, but we have a lot of big things going. So their thought was trying to find the money to purchase the trailer, and then finance having that one lump payment going like the 5 years, so that it didn't eat up that whole budget every year with the plow truck and the cycle that we're on with that. I'm sure I heard that. I don't want to be an expert, but about equipment or anything, but I know that was their thought, if that helps with what we do.
Not to interrupt,
Yep, go ahead, Jay.
So for 5 annual payments, the roadside mower alone at the 203,874 and change is 47,327.76 for 5 years. So roughly 47.4 for 5 years.
Okay, that's the cost of financing?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
for
for the mower
financing.
alone.
Just the roadside mower alone. And then the
like
combined is what you have in the packet.
That sounds like something we can do a
Are you
motion.
talking
Thank
about the payment or the cost of financing?
Payment.
you.
Okay,
Payment.
all right.
Not
Yeah,
cost
yeah.
of financing.
When I
Five
say
feet,
cost of financing, I mean, what are we paying extra as opposed to if we wrote them a check today, you know?
oh, I didn't do that
Well, it's
part.
203 is the raw cost, right?
Yeah, 203,874.
And 47.4 times 5 is 237. So you're looking at
$35,000.
34,000 ish.
How much?
You're paying over in interest
Oh,
over 5 years?
35,000.
Oh, so it's like 8% or something, maybe?
I didn't see the percentage in there in the proposal. Is it in there?
No, he didn't provide that to me. Just
Yeah,
it
you
was
got to figure that stuff out yourself until you sign.
Why would
the
they be that
paperwork.
helpful?
yeah.
That's why we're here, to ask those questions.
Yeah, right. You gotta ask those annoying questions. That's ouch. It's a little higher than but okay. But it gives us the issue is the flexibility issue that we can take possession right away.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Don't
Well,
finance
and
it.
we're not going to, frankly, we're just not in a position to write a check probably for $200,000, right? So,
I mean, even if we bake it into to next year's budget, we jack that fund up, it doesn't become available till July 1, right?
yeah.
So that we'd be waiting for months.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this, the machine is available now. It's an in-stock show unit. If it were to sell to somebody else, then price only escalates from there, and then we're waiting, 300 plus days before another mower is
In the thick of the season.
It's available now, and it's the same thing with the trailer. The trailer is 35,000, the first option, and the other trailer is 36,600. For option 2.
Given that cost of financing, I'd say we avoid financing any more than we have to.
Absolutely.
Right.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Now, would we be looking to buy the trailer ASAP then out of this year? Well, right. In other words, it would actually take place now in this budget.
Well,
there's the fund, obviously.
Yeah, there is the trailer option number 1. The trailer is currently in stock, and if it were to sell at 6 to 8 months lead time at that, I don't know if the price would go up at that point, but and then option 2 is only 8 weeks lead time, which isn't that bad, and that's $36,000 and
Eric, we would take this out of the capital equipment fund.
We would.
Yep. So we may want 2 motions here or a 2-part motion, right? To authorize the purchase of the trailer and then authorize $47,400 by payments thereof to finance the mower.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly.
All right.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll go ahead and make it. So I move that we approve the purchase of the trailer as requested, up to what was this higher number?
37.
Yeah,
up to 37.
Up to 37,000 to be taken from the capital equipment fund, and then that we also authorize the financing, subject to approval by the town at town meeting, the financing of the new mower at 5 payments of 47,400.
I second the motion.
Bill seconds. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Do we have any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, thank you, Jay. Appreciate the time.
Yep, thank you for your time, and thanks for all you do. And good luck with the rest of the night.
Thank you, Jay.
We're just starting. Just getting started. Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody. Okay, we will move on to our budget workshop session. So as I mentioned in my email, I think we've got several of these scheduled. I think we're doing a little bit better job in the files that are being presented of annotating the details than we have in the past. So I appreciate that, both on part of Eric and the various departments in the Board of Selectmen. So we'll do our best to kind of make this as efficient as possible. Eric, I guess, do you want to hit the highlights then maybe and just go through your discussion of the top 10 changes?
Sure, I can certainly do that. Let me share a screen. Okay, you should be looking at an Excel spreadsheet right now.
Yeah.
Make it just a tiny little bit smaller. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So the first thing I wanted to say is the majority of the big increases in overall spending, and don't get me wrong, there is a lot of increase in overall spending on the town side, but the majority of it relates to capital funds. So the biggest single item is the Andover Elementary School Capital Fund. As you know, the Board of Finance approved adding a capital fund for the Andover Elementary School. That is still under your control, but that is recognizing that it's a town building. In terms of capital expense, much of that is on the town side, not on the school's side. So currently, my recommendation, which the Board of Selectmen has agreed to, is to put approximately $100,000 a year into that fund. In the short term, there's really kind of two things or three things that are on their real priority list. The first is the repair of the bathrooms in the original wing of the building. There are one staff bathroom and then one set of male-female bathrooms for students have been off limits for the last 6 months because there's a significant plumbing leak. And unfortunately, some of that's in the crawl space, but some of it is under the slab. And that's gonna be an expensive proposition to fix. So that is the first thing, is that we start, annually capitalizing that expense so we can start knocking off some of the big expenses. And I've had a discussion with the school. One of the things I've said is that if we're going to be putting money into this, the school has to prepare and show us a true capital plan, because the only way we can figure out how much we should be expending is to understand over a period of 10 years, what are the likely issues? I mean, stuff comes up, but what are the major issues that we're likely to need to address? Mm-hmm. So that is the biggest single nut, is that one. Number two is the total budget for a community center. So, and this number includes essentially the cost of staff and the operating costs to have a whole new building with a director in place. So that is the second kind of largest, nut that we have. And that is assuming a full-time director, and allocating money to cleaning and money for utilities and programming, essentially, some money for programming. The third biggest one, which is an increase of $75,000, is to fund the repair of the culvert at Lake Road on Lake Road at Pasola. We have a state local bridge grant that will pay for half of that project, but that still leaves the town owing somewhere between $800,000 and $900,000. And we're hoping it's closer to the $800,000, but there's kind of no guarantees because culvert replacement costs have been kind of out of control the last 3 to 4 years. So our goal is we've been putting money in that fund now. This will be the 4th year. So we have some money established. We're increasing the money this year and next year. And combined, that should be enough to replace the single, the one culvert at Lake Road. We still have 2 other culverts that are classified as, critical / failing. One of them is on Bear Swamp Road, which is a problem because that's a dead end road and there's no other alternatives if that one fails. The other one is on Hutchinson. We do think we have an alternative, a lower cost alternative to not addressing that culvert. But what I'm saying is that our annual costs for doing culverts is not likely to go down in future years. As soon as we pay this one off, we're going to be putting money into addressing the next failed culvert. And that's going to extend, for at least, the next 10 to 15 years before we've addressed all the ones that are in the poor or failing category.
Eric?
Yep.
So is that something that, I don't see money here to start building up for those other 2 projects or however we decide to do the second one. But if it's a fail, I think the way you explain it to me is a number 1 or a number 2, which means it's about to fail, Bear Swamp. When are we going to start putting money away for that? I don't see that in this expenditure, or am I missing it?
No, you're not missing it. So where I think we're going to put a big chunk of that away is, as you know, Bunker Hill Bridge is slated for replacement starting this coming February. So basically 1 year from today, we start funding that bridge. And then immediately, and so we have a pool of money that's about $450,000 or $460,000 that we have in cash now. When that bridge is fully complete, the town will not have paid anything. But what we do have to do is we have to pay the intermediate bills, and then we get reimbursed by the state and federal, government, which is why we're keeping that account there. As soon as that bridge is basically paid off, we go immediately into doing the same thing for the bridge at Long Hill, which is, again, fully 100% funded through state and federal grants. But we're required to pay the contractors and then get reimbursed. So we're going to need that money for probably the next 3.5 years, maybe 4 years. At the end of that period of time, we'll have about $450,000 we can repurpose. And my intention would be to repurpose all of that for future culvert work. But the other thing to keep in mind is we're only going to be doing culverts at the rate at which we can fund them. We can get grants through the state local bridge program. Because frankly, we can't afford to pay the full cost of replacing these. We have to be working in the realm where we're at least grant funding for half of the cost. So I think that's probably realistically 4 years down the road. And we're going to hope like heck we don't have a major blowout in that culvert. We have had some sinkholes, which we patched. And we're prepared to do similar to what we did on Bunker Hill if we have to, which is dig real quick on both sides of the culvert and then fill the whole thing up with flowable fill, and then pave back over it for a couple of years until we can fix it right. So I'm nervous about it, and there's no way I can guarantee we won't have a failure. Certainly, if you look at Columbia and all the surrounding towns, all of them have had to deal with emergency major culvert repairs in the last year or so because we've had so much water. But so far, we've been kind of proactive in our maintenance of these things. So we've avoided and we've gotten lucky, some of the major issues.
Yep.
Does that answer that question?
Sure does. Thank you.
Okay.
And just so everybody knows, while you guys were talking, I looked at the fund balance stuff. We have about 438 in the bridge fund that Eric was talking about. And we have this fund that Eric's got marked as not sure whether it still exists. It's about 27,000. If you were to put those together, if we were to transfer the money over, you'd have 464, almost 465 potentially available in future as a nest egg for these massive culvert projects.
Right. And I am also, as soon as the Times Farm Bridge officially gets closed out by the state, we're transferring all of the balance of that into the presuming the Board of Finance agrees, because ultimately it's your call, but assuming you're okay with it, we'll transfer all that into the Bridge and Culvert Fund. And I'm actually relying on that money plus the 175 we put in each of the next 2 years to have enough money to complete that one culvert.
Right, and that's 85,000.
Correct.
So that gets about 550.
Right.
If we transfer the what was it, the town the fund that you had identified as kind of just sitting there, town garage fund. So if you put those all together, you get to 550.
Yep, and we can talk about the pluses and minuses of where to put that money, but yes, that is something that we should be considering. So that's item number 3. Item number 4, we have a huge increase in health and dental insurance costs. This is predicated on 2 things. The first is an overall between 16 and 17% increase in our average healthcare costs. And then the second thing is an assumption that if we hire a new full-time person for the community center, that person will likely be a 1+1. So, I mean, I'm not assuming it'll be a full family plan, but you have to, as a baseline assumption, budget for, a person who has a spouse on the healthcare. Maybe we'll get lucky and it'll be less than that. Maybe we'll get really lucky and they won't need healthcare at all. But we have to budget for that.
All right.
The Planning and Zoning Commission has requested that, and the Board of Selectmen's gone along with, grudgingly, adding $50,000 to the existing open space fund. If you have questions about that, I would suggest you talk to either the town planner or talk to the chair of Planning and Zoning Commission, Jed Larson. Adding $50,000 to the multi-use building fund. That's a fund we haven't funded in 3 or 4 years. We had originally built that fund up to pay for the community center, but we were able to pay for the majority of the community center with ARPA funds. But we've now kind of agreed to spend some of that money to finish off the community center. At a prior town meeting, we've agreed to spend a portion of that money fitting out and finishing the senior transportation garage on Center Street. And then presumably the town at a town meeting will approve the town match for the steep grant we got for the recreational fields that will fund the playground and the pickleball courts. So with that, we've basically exhausted every bit of money in the multi-use building fund. So my suggestion is that we start annually putting some money into that to keep that fund solvent so we don't run it down to zero. The treasurer has basically said that although she's not going to increase her hourly rate that she charges the town has not budgeted for anywhere near enough hours for her to do her job as the town treasurer. And so she has requested an increase in her salary. The line item for the assistant treasurer clerk, would be an increase in hours from 30 to 33 a week, which the Board of Selectmen decided was appropriate upon the recommendation of the finance director.
Eric, can I ask a question right on that one?
Sure.
Because I know, and that was my question, you know, I did see that still on here. So thank you for clarifying why it was such a big increase, because I know that they talked about, you know, I think there was a big increase asked for, but then it came up that it is a union position that was just negotiated. And so is it fair for me to ask if it's been talked about, if they want to increase their hours? I mean, I liked that compromise, but.
Well, to be honest, I've been authorizing her, 1 to 2 hours a week or a little bit more to keep caught up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is actually a realistic, it would be realistic to increase her hours, somewhat. So that's an approach I think is realistic, given how many hours she's actually worked.
No, I can appreciate that, and I have some knowledge of that, as you know. So I'm glad that that's the compromise that came up. I know also that, so with the treasurer's line too, because I think once she finished her big project for the town, thank goodness for her, like's been said in the Board of Selectmen and our things, she, finished her job there. I believe the assistant clerk was very helpful to her during that stage too, because of course, like the assistant clerk said to me in person, you can't go forward without going backward. So they both came into something that was really not a good place to be. They've not only, fixed whatever was wrong, went for, and now are moving forward. So that being said, knowing that the assistant treasurer would probably need to work a few more hours because there is a lot of work involved. How many more hours is the treasurer? Because working only 5 a week, it must be difficult when they have to collaborate. How many hours is she willing to put in for this increase?
It would come close to doubling the amount of hours she works for the town on average. So that would be a significant increase. And in truth, I think right now we're still pretty understaffed overall, in that department. That's probably, other than me personally, that's probably the most understaffed portion that the town has. At least in my opinion. I would suggest at one of the budget meetings this spring, we should be able to get Cheryl on a call. And I think that, because I've basically let Cheryl manage that department and manage her and her assistant. So it probably makes sense for you to hear from her directly rather than me exactly what she thinks she needs for that budget, because I'm basically being a proponent of what she's told me she thought. The other thing I think we're going to have to face is that, Cheryl is not burning up to stay the town treasurer. I think if we had another option, she would be more than happy to step down. She has retired from every single other thing in obligation rather than us. And she's committed to living in Florida half of the year. So I think we are going to, and part of the reason why I definitely want more money allocated on the treasurer side is because I think in the next year, we're going to be forced to look for other options, whether we want to or not. Because I don't think Cheryl's certainly not staying for years.
Eric, I I couldn't agree more, having had, you know, a few conversations with both of them and being involved when they hired her. Yeah, we're so lucky they're there. Getting, I agree with you, getting it, and I feel like a lot of work and the amount of work that the assistant does now and correctly, and getting many you know, obviously through the direction of the treasurer, has gotten all the systems in place. But still, when you're the worker bee position, it's a lot of time for that assistant treasurer. So I see, you know, watching the last thing fail that we tried with the school and the whole thing. And I couldn't agree with you more. So I think this is very important. So I just wanted to kind of see what the background was with that. And that would be great if we could have Cheryl on so that everybody could hear her thoughts. Because, yeah, and that's all. We don't need to belabor it anymore. I agree with you. I mean, they've done a fantastic job, both of them, getting the town in order along with you. Yeah, so thank you.
Right.
Financially, yes, yeah.
Next one up is salaries for senior transportation. So this has been a little bit of a struggle between myself and Kathy Palazzi, who runs senior transportation, because she has been adamant about keeping that budget level. But it just isn't realistic because we overrun that budget every single year. So, you know, I went back for the last 2 years and said, okay, on average, how many hours of driving do we account for in a year? And what do we need to budget for that? You know, so I upped that budget a lot, kind of over their objections, but just because, you know, she can keep budgeting $27,000, but that's not what she's spending. So what I'm saying is, you know, if we're going to drive 20,000 hours or 2,000 hours a year, which is what we do roughly, you know, we need to set about, you know, $44,000 in the salary line. There is one employee that's getting a significant raise. And here's why. Our longest serving transportation driver, who is Ellie, was hired kind of under the old regime at a very low hourly rate. And because we couldn't get any other drivers that would accept that hourly rate, all of the 3 drivers after her that got hired at a much higher hourly rate. And it's not really fair to pay Ellie, you know, 16 bucks an hour when everybody else is making considerably more. So one of the things the Board of Selectmen agreed to do was just level fund all the drivers. So the hourly rate for all the drivers is identical. You know, so the rest of them go up the 4% that they agreed to for non-union employees, but Ellie goes up more so she matches.
Can I ask a follow-up just on that? Just so understand what you just said. I'm surprised how much we transport our seniors, you know, for such a small, I had no idea. Is this only because I used to transport my senior parents to all their appointments and take work off of it? Is this a requirement that we do this? I mean, I think it's great and I would never take it away, but I just have never heard of this. So is it a requirement that, say my father had a medical appointment, he could have called his town and boom, they would have brought him?
So it depends. It's not an absolute requirement.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, we're also getting, even though we don't budget it in this line item, we're getting money back from the state or from the federal government through a specific transportation program to provide this. Like a lot of towns have what's called the Dial-A-Ride program. That's a specific federal program. We do this kind of as an alternative to that. But yeah, we do provide, overall, we provide a lot of services to our seniors.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have a disproportionately aging population compared to the state in a lot more compared to the federal average age. So that's part of the reason, you know, the average age in the country is 39 and the average age and Andover right now is like 51. So we just have a lot more people that need it. And we have a lot more people that are in that age category where they require, much more transportation services.
And I have no
just
problem with it at all. I think it's wonderful that we do it. I just wondered if we were required as a town to do it because we have a lot of seniors. Yeah.
correct.
I wish I knew about it sooner.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other than that, the next item up is, I would really like to be able to hire somebody part-time to function as a project manager. In the way, although this shows up as a $15,000 line item, part of this is the fact that I've agreed to kind of go without a dedicated admin assistant and just essentially pay Kate a stipend to do both jobs. So Kate makes a little bit more money, but overall that saves about $15,000 a year by not having a dedicated admin assistant. Because the thing I need most is the project management. The other stuff I can cover, but I just physically don't have enough time to run all the projects that we have going. So either we slow down the rate at which we're doing stuff, or we get some assistance at that. So that's that.
And one quick, sorry, then we won't circle back to it, but real quick. So in the long run, because for being involved, I know how spread out you are and I speak to it and you're, involved in everything. You're at all the night meetings, all of that, which is commendable. Okay. Can I just ask I'm wondering, I just feel like as an admin assistant myself, I save my bosses so much time and energy by being organized, efficient, and streamlining everything. So I have to wonder in the long run, and I think it's great for Kate, glad she's still doing it, don't want to take anything away, but would it help instead of having a project manager, if we had someone organized that could take all your calls, get all your stuff, what's the balance of that maybe working out better? And then, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I contemplated it. I mean, the things I absolutely don't want to do, because I've been stuck doing that before too, and that's sucks because I'm not very good at it, is set up the meetings for all the boards and commissions, deal with minutes, deal with the website, deal with some of the social media stuff. That's one of my biggest headaches. And one of the things the Board of Selectmen was adamant that when I took over, that we do a good job of communication. So Kate's pretty good at that. So there's no question I can pawn all that off on her. Would I like to have a full-time assistant? Absolutely. Have I asked for one multiple times? Yeah, but I kept getting shot down every time I asked for it. And then I really kind of took a step back this year when I started the budget. And I said, as far as my time goes, what's the limit? What's the biggest limiting factor in me getting stuff done? And really, it's the time dedicated to where I feel I'm failing the most is in keeping projects moving, because it's not grant funding, because we've been really successful with that. So we got the money, but we can't move the projects along. Like it's taken me basically almost 2 years to get both the major HVAC projects for the town hall and the fire department up and running. And, we're going to be in construction on those. Well, we're in construction of parts of that now, but, that's a lot bigger a delay than there really should have been. And I'm a couple of years behind on getting the senior transportation garage built. Now, not all of that's in my control. A lot of that is SHPO. So some of that delay is out of my control. But what we need most is project management and people actually running construction projects for the town. And so that's kind of why I'm saying I would rather reinforce that than give me more support from an admin assistant perspective. I would like both, but I just know I'm not going to get it.
No, I appreciate that. I know with the funding, do you mind if I ask, well, maybe we should ask personally. I don't know what the stipend is for Kate to do the extra duties. So that's what I'm trying to balance, stretching and I understand they don't mind doing that. So I don't want to take that away. I've often talked to you about like the time, like I see you everywhere doing everything.
Sure.
And now that you're proposing this other position, I would have thought maybe you could have been the project manager if you were out more, or even so that, and I'm getting into the weeds, so we'll move on, but thank you for talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if I ever found an admin assistant, that had a decent amount of project management experience, I'd go for that. But the likelihood of finding that is about zero. So
I didn't know if that could be, to me, that could have been the public works supervisor, because I know we managed, we raised that level of that position a couple of years ago too. So I guess, but I'm not trying to manage anything. I just kind of look at the leaders at the top, and what goes underneath. So
yeah,
that's
I
all.
would say Jay is probably as stressed out as I am, trying to get through his day. So
well, you know best.
I would really hesitate to put more on his plate. Could he do it? Yeah. But what would he not be doing if he was doing that? That's,
Okay. Thank you.
And then the last one is I was just looking at the long-term needs for the fire department. So we agreed last year that we would put forward essentially $1 million financing package for tanker. And that's going to cost the town roughly $125 a year for the next 10 years. There is a fair amount of money in the fire department's capital fund right now because we built it up over a number of years. We're going to spend about $100,000 of that fixing the HVAC stuff in the building. And I'm probably going to put a little bit of the cost of the propane tanks, in that fund. I'm hoping to not have to tap that fund for the backup generator money for the 3 facilities. I'm hoping we can grant fund that through FEMA, but I can't guarantee it. So just looking at their overall budget, we've been funding it at, between 80, 65, 80. In other words, I've asked for 125,000 every year. Last year was the first year we actually put that in. Previous years, we kept cutting it. But given that we're going to have one single payment looming for 10 years, that's going to essentially account for 100% of that, of our $125,000 that we're putting in. I think that needs to be upped because they are going to have to replace their compressor system. There are a bunch of other additional capital needs, and that's assuming nothing goes bad. So in other words, I think if we go up to 137, we can survive with that budget, presuming that they can sell both the rescue, the heavy rescue, and the existing engine, which they're trying to do now, replace it with the squad, have one less total vehicle, and slightly lower overall maintenance costs, if that makes sense. So that's the last. So if you look at the overall increase in our budget, about $500,000 of the increases is the stuff I've talked about right there. So the vast majority of the increase in what we're asking for is represented in those 10 items. At the next budget, I would be happy to start going through the budget line by line. If you want to do that, I think that's appropriate. But the majority of the expense change is right there in those 10 items.
Go ahead, Rob. Hand up.
Just a question regarding the multi-use fund, building fund.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, you don't want to run it down to zero because some of the things that we're talking about maybe using that fund money on, I'm wondering if they're really capital. Like running the community center, or like you want to put money back in there to use for what exactly that's capital rather than operating.
Right. We're in terms of running the community center, that's in the community center budget.
That's separate, right? Sorry.
Where we're going to need a significant amount of money for that building is we're going to build it for under $1 million, but the whole lower floor is not going to be finished off. It will be drywall. It will have ceilings and walls, and it will be insulated, but it will not have bathrooms, and it will not, have anything really other than heating and lighting. So that's part. And the second thing is we are not building the kitchen out at all. We're going to have 4 bare walls in the kitchen, and we know our final bill to actually build out that kitchen, is going to be in the $65,000 or $70,000 range. So that part of that money for the community center, and the reason why the board and actually the Board of Finance agreed a year ago to designate that money was because we knew to get under the $1 million cap, we were going to leave that out. Does that make sense?
I remember us funding furnishings and things like that. That's not including what you're talking about now. You're talking about more material upgrades to the facility in the future.
Well, if you consider kitchen furnishing.
No. What I mean is, we had agreed to a specific amount for literal furnishing, but did not fund something like making the kitchen a kitchen. Is that right? Or am I misremembering?
Well, I think that, so we had basically said we were going to account for somewhere between 125,000 and 150,000 for fit out of the building. That's not furniture. That's not tables and chairs. That's primarily the kitchen, and then potentially finishing off the bathrooms in the basement. Those are the big expenses associated with that.
Okay. So when we did that, were we under the impression we had enough money in the fund to do that, but we're not, and now we're saying maybe not?
No, we very definitely have the money available for that. We have enough money to cover finishing the community center, number one.
Yep.
Number two, the additional cost, the town match, essentially for the grant we got to finish off the senior transportation garage. And we have enough money for the town match for the steep grant for the pickleball courts and the athletic field upgrades. But having done those 3 things, we've essentially run that fund dry.
And so what would be left would be the first floor stuff you were talking about? Like future.
I can't predict necessarily what the town's going to want to do in terms of major building capital projects. But conceptually, what we've said is that the building maintenance fund covers ongoing maintenance, and the multi-use building fund covers big improvements. You could consider, some of the stuff at the school eligible for that fund too. It depends. That's not a me call. That's a you call and a Board of Selectmen call. But that's essentially what that fund was set up for.
Okay. All right. Thanks. I was just trying to get my arms around what we're thinking that we need to build this fund back up to do. So that helps. Thanks.
I think it's huge this year that we see the actual balances that are currently in the funds too. I don't know. We've ever had that
next.
What?
Okay.
Yeah, I had that up earlier. It's helpful. You know, like there's 300,000 in the fire fund, for instance.
It's awesome seeing it. I'm so glad. This is going to be so helpful because we were always just trying to theoretically add where could we maybe take a little. Now we see the actual balance. And like Eric
Yep.
and you just asked, Rob, what's spoken for already. So this is going to be huge. You know, it's kind of laying the groundwork before we. So yeah, thanks.
So like for instance, the fire fund, you know, we have 300,000 in there. We got 75K ish for the HVAC upgrade. The truck payment, if we load in our usual 125, that nets out. So we'd be down to 225. And Eric's saying, well, put another 12 in there or so, you know, just to get us moving. That helps kind of conceptualize where you're trying to go. So thanks for this.
Yeah, let me just, I'm still trying to pull that up so we can all look at that. And
I have so many tabs open right now.
I know that is my problem.
Exactly. I have it up. I mean, you know,
sure, you can share it. I just got too many budget windows. I can't find the one I want.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. I got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay. Good.
Okay. So this is basically, this shows current balance of everything we have and what we're proposing funding. And I can kind of walk through that. Conservation and development. We had been putting money aside every year to fund the every 10th year plan of conservation and development. So that fund had gotten built up over a bunch of years. We made a decision last year, instead of funding a specific consultant for the POCD, we would just hire a consulting town planner. So now I'm spending from that budget for last year, for this current year and for next year to offset the cost of the town planner. So in 2 years, instead of budgeting, you know, $36,000 a year for the town planner, or a little less than that, 24,000, we're going to have to budget an extra, like, I don't know, 10 or 11,000 a year. So that's that. Reval reserve, every 5 years, the town has to do a revaluation of all real property, personal property, and everything. That's expensive. So what we've been doing is we've consistently been putting $16,000 a year into a reval fund. So we have roughly $80,000 available when reval comes, which is roughly the cost. A little bit more if we do what's called the full measure and list, a little bit less if we opt for a cheaper option. And that's usually the Board of Selectmen that decides which route that goes. Town garage, I'm pretty sure you as a Board of Finance had recommended you move the money from the town garage fund into the building maintenance fund a couple of years ago. So I was actually a little surprised to see that pop up still on the books. I thought we had actually eliminated that fund. We do have one big expense we're going to have to bite off on the Public Works building at some point. Well, two expenses. One is the generator for the building is 56 years old. So that's a little long in the tooth. And the second thing is we're having a lot of spalling of the exterior brick. And we either need to stucco the building or we need some kind of solution to decrease the deterioration of the building. But I don't want to talk about that right now. Okay. Multi-use building fund, we already talked about. Currently, there's 417 in it. But we've already, you know, the town has already agreed to spend money from that for the community center. And at town meeting has already agreed to put money into the senior transportation garage. And then we have the match, presuming at a town meeting that the residents go along with it, our match for the steep grant for the athletic fields. Building maintenance fund, you know, we've built that up over the last 3 years. Right now we have about $135,000 worth of approved projects that are underway. So we're not all of that is going to go to that. I'm going to need to draw from this fund to pay the contractors when we do the work. A lot of that we're going to get back from LoSIP, which is a state funding mechanism that's available to us. But right now, I need all of that money as a swing to pay the bills until we can get reimbursed by LoSIP. Remember, we also dedicated $30,000 of that to redo the windows and the doors at the Andover Museum as part of our blood money to SHPO to get them to agree to allow us to tear down the old building.
Right.
So part of that is taken up, and about $12,000 was allocated to the bleacher project, which should be done in the next couple of months. So although we have $150,000, basically the majority of that is spoken for in the short term, although we'll refund a good portion of that once we get money back from LoSIP. Road improvement and tar combined, we have a fair bit of money in that account. Our spring, because we didn't chip seal last year, our spring chunk of chip sealing is going to be about $180,000. So that'll take a big chunk of that. The remaining of that money will be about $60,000 worth of guardrail repair that we need to do. I mean, we need a lot more than that, but that's what we're going to take off from this chunk. And then we're going to start doing the same shimming program we've been doing the last few years and a second round of chip seal later in the year. So although we do have a pretty big balance in that right now, you can anticipate that money will be spent, including plus the 410 in additional funding will be spent in this budget season. We try to leave around $150,000 in that account at the end of the year so we can get a jump on the shimming of our roads to get that done before July 1, because it's easier to get contractors than it is right after the fiscal year starts. So that's that. Tree removal. Currently it says we have 44,000, but tenant has been in working for like 3 weeks straight. So that number's probably depleted pretty considerably. We annually spend pretty much our whole $50,000 allotment. We keep a little money in reserve in case we have a big storm right at the end of the year. But you know, that's in the $6,000 to $8,000. We will spend the rest of that money. And we've been leveraging that money because we've been getting the utility company to work with us and pay for a significant fraction of the overall tree work we're doing in town. In fact, not this year, but last year, we spent $50,000 and the utility company put in like almost $90,000. So we were able to get a lot more done than what we had budgeted for. So that's been really successful. Equipment reserve, of that 119,000, you can subtract 58.5 because we have just made the truck payment. So that remaining money will be the money that we pay for the trailer, and then presuming we do the lease, then when we refill the money this year, we immediately do the first payment for the roadside mower. School improvement fund, fire department fund, like I said, that's about 300,000. About 100,000 of that is spoken for right now. Our payments should start sometime in this next fiscal year. So we'll have $125,000 a year expense just for just for that one squad vehicle. But they have a bunch of things that do need replacement. They are going to need to replace a lot of their air packs. That's a really expensive, that's over $100,000, $140,000, something like that, to replace all their air packs. And then the second thing is that the compressor that they use for refilling the air packs is at its life expectancy. So in the next couple of years, that's going to need to be repaired. So I guess what I'm saying is that although we have $300,000 in that, we could spend that really quickly, just on necessities. Pedestrian bridge fund. We're still trying to figure out how we can, because this was targeted money that the town was given for a specific project, like when we built the pedestrian bridge. But since we don't own that bridge anymore, but it was grant funding given to us, it's a little unclear on how we can spend it. One of the things I was thinking of is that if we do the connectivity project down Route 316, we do have to make some modifications and change grade right next to that bridge. And I think it's close enough we could say that's all part of the bridge project and spend that money on that. That's the only thing I could think of. Again, Times Farm Bridge Fund, that $85,000. My intention is as soon as the state finally gets around to closing that project, we're going to transfer all of that money into the Bridge and Culvert Fund so we have enough to do the project. Bunker Hill Bridge Fund, again, that will be the swing fund money for the next two bridge projects, which is Bunker Hill Bridge, and then immediately after that, Long Hill Bridge. And at some point we should start talking about how and when we're going to, what we're going to do for financing, because at some point we will, during those projects, there's a couple big expenses we're going to pay, like when we get the prefab bridge trusses, where our 1 month payment is going to be a lot more than $400,000. Conversation for different day. Bridge and Culvert Fund we talked about. Open Space Fund, that is under the control of the Planning and Zoning Commission. That is the fund to create open space. To put it in perspective, the Open Space Fund, that the money in that accumulated over around 25 years. The way it works is if you subdivide a piece of property, the town has the option of either taking a piece of that property for open space if it wants it, or getting fee in lieu of open space. So the majority of that money was paid in by people subdividing in town, and that's the towns where the town took the fee instead of the open space. So it's accumulated very slowly. Land costs are pretty high. The Planning Commission wants the ability to jump on a desirable piece of open space. Most towns fund open space through general taxation, so they've requested that. Severance fund, this is a fund we're required to have that pays for, let's say, an employee that has been here more than 10 years and has accumulated an enormous amount of sick time. They're allowed to be paid out 1/4, the equivalent of 1/4 of their sick time, plus if they have extra vacation time and things like that. So it's an actuarial thing we're supposed to be maintaining as a sufficient severance fund. We ran it down to zero about 4 years ago when Eddie and Tim Higley both left in a fairly short period of time, but collectively between the two of them had worked almost 60 years for the town, and they both ended up getting fairly substantial payoffs just by virtue of having worked here so long.
Hey, Eric, just
Yep.
one question on that. Is there a cap on, I heard you, quarter of whatever you can do, but is there a cap on vacation time that you can accumulate? Like, do they have a certain number of days? I forget that. I should know by looking
Yeah,
at the contract.
vacation time there is.
Yeah.
It's for most employees, it's basically the max you could accumulate in a year. So it's
A
between
year?
2 and 4 weeks for most employees.
Oh, in a year. Okay.
Yeah,
You,
right.
yeah. So like how many weeks you can,
So it's for vacation, it's between the most somebody could really turn in. A worst case scenario, an employee had been here more than 20 weeks,
Mhm.
held over 5 days, which he's allowed to from a previous year. He could theoretically turn in 5 weeks of vacation and get paid for that.
Okay,
So that's part of it.
That's pretty okay, thank you. That's all.
You know, where
regular.
we take a hit is that per the union contracts, and I think it's actually in the personnel policy too, if you've been here more than 10 years, you can take however many days of sick time you have accumulated unused, you can get paid off for 1/4 of those that you have. And there is a cap, but the cap's pretty high. So that's where we end up getting chewed up in costs and why we have a severance fund.
Yeah, understood. Thank you.
Public library fund, that is the fund that's not town money. That was a donation to the library. We don't actively fund their library fund. That was a generous resident who died and left the library quite a bit of money. In the ARPA Fiscal Recovery Fund, that's what we have left of our initial ARPA grant. That money is basically fully encumbered for paying for the community center. So now that I'm losing my voice, that in a nutshell is everything we have for capital funds. At least all the big ones, you know, that have significant amounts of money. Questions?
Further questions or comments?
Just
I guess
great
my
job.
one comment is with respect to the open space fund. That's a kind of a P&Z thing, right? We might want to talk to P&Z about what they're thinking about. You know, what they're earmarking that for in their minds. Since it's what they were asking for 50 and there's 234 in there now. So, you know, pretty significant chunk of change in comparison to what there's in there now. So I actually, if this is what I think this is, and I think Eric, you already explained it, I'm inclined to agree. If memory serves, years ago, there was a piece of property that came up for sale. It was dirt cheap. The town couldn't pull the trigger because we had no money in a fund, and we lost it because of that. And if this is something that would allow the town to pounce on a piece of property that would really work for us, expand our space, maybe along the rail trail or what have you, you know, I'm in. But I kind of might want to hear from them about what they're thinking. Maybe we can set something up. I don't know.
Yeah, if you want to hear from the chair of the planning and zoning, I think he would be happy to talk to you about open space fund and needs and requirement for that.
When is the last time we spent out of that, Eric? Because it was a topic among the Board of Selectmen too, you know, when they knew they were putting forth a big spending package that we'll eventually get to, I'm sure, in another meeting. I know we're doing the overview. So they kind of debated it too, kind of like Rob is talking about. They're like, you know, they're in favor, but is this the year to put it in with all the other expenses? So, and I'm glad to see we do have a sizable total already. So by looking at these balances, it just gives me a clearer picture. So
right. So the last kind of two expenses that we spent on was last year. We paid for a appraisal of a property off of Shoddy Mill Road, and we actually applied through. There's a state grant program where the state helps towns and municipalities purchase open space to meet the state's open space goals. In that particular case, we would have put up every dime we had in the open space fund. Joshua's trust would have kicked in some money, and the state would have paid 80% of the costs to buy the parcel we were trying for on Shoddy Mill. Unfortunately, that got sold to a private buyer before we could go through finish the state grant application. So, we spent around 8,000 on what's called the Yellow Book appraisal, which is what you're required to do prior to, basically, before you can apply for money through the state, you have to do what's called the Yellow Book appraisal, and then you have to get a second appraiser review the first appraiser's data and also sign off on it.
So it would have been it would have been more than 230, whatever our balance is in there.
Yeah, the total purchase price was around 750, I think, 800,000, something like that.
How many acres do you recall?
Yeah, that was about 160-acre parcel. And it also abuts about 37 acres of town property that is landlocked. So that would have given us about a 200-acre contiguous chunk. Had a bunch of wetlands on it, but they were very important wetlands, which we wanted to conserve anyway. So that's one example. Prior to that, we bought land off of Lake Road, if you know where the rail trail trailhead is on Lake Road. We purchased that, and we purchased about a 3-acre piece in there out of open space.
And how much was that, would you say?
I think we spent about 35,000 on that.
Okay. So it just varies on the properties and different, that gives a good overview. Thank you.
Yeah, and we had gone after a piece of property owned by Tom Talbot, that was off of Long Hill, and we ended up not doing that because we couldn't afford the property. So then we tried to see whether we could buy the development rights, and the development rights would have taken basically every bit or more than we had in the open space fund. So yeah, I mean, if we're going after big chunks of property, which is what our plan of conservation and development calls for, we are going to need additional funds in that, if we're going to be able to do that.
I just want to say thank you, Eric. You did a great job of explaining all of these line items for us. So thanks.
Okay. Are you good with this? Can I stop the share on that?
Yes.
Good with me. Okay.
Okay.
Well, we are about 2 hours into our meeting here. We've covered a lot of ground. I would propose that we consider adjourning and then, carrying on at our next meeting with the review of the budget. Any more specific questions that come up? We also need to schedule the Andover Elementary School for their presentation, which I should have reached out to them. I probably should reach out to them, see if they could do next week. If not, we'll do it the following week, see what's convenient for them. Does anybody else have anything that pressing that they want to discuss tonight?
I was just going to ask. Oh,
go ahead, Bill.
Well, go ahead, Bill.
Oh, I was going to ask you, Rob, has there been any more development in your talks with Shannon?
Yeah, I actually texted her tonight saying, we need to circle back. We haven't been able to link up. I've been super busy at work, and I get the sense same for her. But I did, in part because I was reminded by the fact that in this budget we're potentially loading $100,000 into a fund we have no policy for. So I texted her and said we really need to meet. So I'll work on that, guys, but I don't have anything for you right now.
Just a point of order, we really shouldn't be discussing that.
We shouldn't. It's not on the agenda. Sorry. The only other thing, Mark, is what I brought up before, which is the P&Z thing. If we want to hear from them, if we want to try to schedule something with them.
Yeah, if you'd like,
if everybody else is fine with it and they don't need it, that's fine. I just raised it as a potential thing.
What do you guys think as a board? I mean, I don't think it would hurt to hear from them. It would be a first for us, I think, since I've been on the board to kind of understand what they do. I do in general terms. I thought Eric explained it pretty well, and I've been a part of some of the discussions about, or at least have been observer in some of the discussions on some of those parcel issues have come up.
I agree. It's been a little bit discussed in some of the meetings I've been in, and then with Eric kind of bringing it together, the kind of things we're looking to do with it. And the one part of it that I think is part of financial too, and part of budget, is I know eventually that, they talk about the affordable housing and that kind of thing. And that would be a reason that they would have to get plots of land if they want to start getting that a place to think of where they could do with whatever. So
I think open
if
space
they
is
did a
separate.
condensed, like if we limited them to, and I don't mean to be
So, yeah,
like
we'll
a
add them to the
10-minute
meeting.
overview, because
Yeah.
sometimes we get going on things and then
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my thought, a quick 10-minute presentation. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean, the
say
priority-
probably at a regular meeting, might not be a bad idea to do it, but we'll kind of see where we are.
Yeah, I mean, obviously AES would be the priority here. Get them
Yeah.
in. We have the budget document. So we have line item. We can go through it. I looked at it earlier. But yeah, we want to hear from Val or whoever to present that budget to us the way we heard tonight from Rand. So if we can do it next week, great. If not, then the following. I agree.
All right, I guess I do want to point out, we do have one other thing on our agenda, and that's the approve the draft audit. I don't know if anybody has any concerns over what we presented. It would make sense to go ahead and get that done, unless somebody has concerns over the audit as it's written. It is part of the packet. If you want to have more time to review it, we could certainly take this up next week. I don't think it's urgent, right? Is there any pressing on approving it or receiving it, Eric?
We could certainly do it next week. We just absolutely have to make sure we've done it by the end of the month, because I want to submit that. The only thing I would ask that the board is that you read through the corrective action plan that I sent you, that was proposed by the school, because I am very unhappy with it. But
that was my question. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's, the audit is one of the responsibilities of the Board of Finance. So, I mean, I want that, I want your judgment on that, not mine, to go forward.
Can we move, I would kind of go with both of you. If we could put it off for one more week. I've read all of it. And I was just going to ask the question about, I know we wanted to do better with getting that submitted. So by the end of the month would be okay. Yeah.
Yeah, our current extension runs through the end of this month. So as long as we hit submit on, give the auditor the go ahead, and we have the corrective action plan we agree with, then we can go ahead with it. And if you did bring in the school next week to talk about the budget, theoretically you could have that discussion with Val also, about the corrective action plan.
Is next week's meeting a regular meeting that we can adjust the agenda, or do we want to put that on there?
No, it's a special meeting, I think.
So we would want to have that in advance if we want to talk about that.
We would need to have it on the agenda.
Right, we would just
that would be my point.
Agenda.
Correct.
Mark, when will you make finalization of the agenda? Do you do that on Friday? Do we have till Monday?
Well, technically it has to be posted 24 hours before the meeting, but I prefer to do it a little bit earlier than that in case of a screw up. So we could do it next Monday. That gives us enough time to get it posted on the website and posted on in the town clerk's office.
Well, if we know we want to talk about it, we can add it in there. I don't know, but we can just have review,
It seems like if we're gonna have we're gonna have them here anyway, we might as well. If anybody wants to talk about their corrective action plan, we should just put it on there.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go ahead and put AES on the agenda. I'm not positive they'll be available, but we'll get.
Mark, do you want me to reach out tomorrow? I'm happy to do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take care of that, and then I
would reach out to Valerie and Celeste Willard.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they said Celeste, so yeah, include her for sure.
Absolutely. I'll do that tomorrow,
And
then I'll let everyone know.
I did read their corrective action plan. I don't know if you guys all have, but obviously then if we're gonna put that on the agenda for next meeting, everybody try to take a look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, what they're proposing is that they give the town financial information once a year, September, after, 3 months after the year is over. And that to me does not solve the problem that we have.
I think it
did
would be
see
great to
that
have a discussion.
and imagined your objection to it. I wasn't, I'm not surprised to hear you say that. We'd want to hear from them what their thought process is on why that they feel that's necessary or appropriate or whatever. So understood.
Can we actually make changes to that or recommend it because that's their corrective action?
Well, remember too that the corrective action plan technically is my responsibility. The reason why I pawned it off on the school is because all of the audit findings were things that were not under my control. They relate to things that either occurred in the school business office or relate to the fact that they haven't shared information. So I can't write a corrective action plan because last year I wrote a corrective action plan to correct this, but they didn't actually do that. So since they didn't do it, it doesn't do us any good.
I think it'll be great to have an open discussion with all the stakeholders there. Because that's what we were talking about, let's just, I agree with you. At least they did present us with something. We'll all take a look at it on a fresh brain and then come to the table. And if we can, luckily, hopefully get Val to come to next week. She could be busy, but I'll propose it to her tomorrow. Then we can kind of try to broach both things.
Is there any penalty for them not doing what they were supposed to do?
They were cited in the audit,
Well, I mean, we had multi-year, the town got cited for years before we sorted out our finance.
Right.
So with due respect to the school, they've had some trouble in their finance office. So did we, right? And we've got that. I think we've got that sorted now, thankfully. And their argument is like that they're sorting it. Or they're almost there or whatever. It took us years longer than we wanted it to take for us to sort out our nonsense. So and nobody, in the end, we didn't have our heads taken off, although we were getting close, I think. At one point.
Well, the corrective actions we wrote, I think were appropriate, though. That's one thing to consider. We didn't get them effectively implemented with the treasurer necessarily in place. I think that was the challenge we had. There was a lot going on, whatever, it's water.
We had turnover, we had all sorts of problems.
Yeah, but I think it is appropriate for us to make sure that the corrective action plan makes sense. I haven't had a chance to review it, so
have a look and we'll talk about it. So let's figure out if they're available. Otherwise, I'm good. Mark, I agree. I think my brain's full.
Yeah.
I'm happy to motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so the board wants from me at the next
Kim,
meeting.
right?
Sorry.
Sorry. Go on, Eric.
Yeah,
Joanne's
I did
gonna
read
line
the
up and
corrective
ask
action
AES
plan.
Sorry?
if they.
I did read the plan.
Hold on, we got too much conversation going. Eric, go ahead.
So as I understand it, Joanne's going to ask AES to be available and present at the next meeting. If I can line them up, do you want to hear from Jed at the next meeting? And what other deliverables do you want from me at this point for that meeting?
I would
my
say
opinion,
you
Mark,
Jed about availability for the next 2 meetings in case, because I'd like to stagger it if possible. AES one, P&Z another. If AES comes back and says we can't do the next meeting, we can do the one after. Then could we slot Jed in? That kind of thing.
Yeah, the meeting on the 27th is a regular meeting. It might be a better one for planning and zoning.
That's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah. fingers crossed we're able to get Val, because then we can next week, and then we can approach some of kind of we'll talk about the budget first, let her present. She does a good job at that. And then hopefully we can discuss a few of the things that we've wanted to discuss openly, and, get her input and feedback as to why. So without keeping going, because then we'll keep this meeting. Nope, I'm in approval of everything you all said. And then
Eric, in terms of, your role, I mean, I don't know exactly. Obviously, pass on whatever you get from Ram in response to our questions.
Sure.
I had one question. I actually meant to ask this before. I'm totally slipped my mind. On the revenue side, on the budget spreadsheet you gave us, I don't know if it's an error or if it's just sort of a TBD, but there's one column that doesn't make any sense to me where it doesn't seem to be putting in the tax revenue to the total revenue. And so it shows up as a negative 366% reduction in revenue.
Oh no.
You see what I'm talking about? Well, when you look at it, just check on that when you have a chance.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So in the previous year's budget, what we've done is, because you've passed a mill rate and we know what we're asking in taxation, that money is plugged in there.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the line for essentially current year. We're not accounting for current year taxation because we haven't set a mill rate. So it's
that number that's in red is since it's a notional, we don't know yet number.
Right. That's what the difference is.
Okay.
Just from the standpoint,
you're talking about current year taxes, just because it's in red. Is that the concern? I'm missing it.
No. If you go a few rows down, Mark. What confused me was revenue subtotal 1.
Yeah.
226.
Yep.
200. Like it's wildly down from 10 million and such.
I see. Yeah.
That's what confused me.
Yeah. So if you look at the formula, it's just not adding current year taxes.
That's a provisional number.
Correct.
We're not putting it in.
Yeah. If you look at the formula, it's not adding it. Okay. Got it.
Right. And I went to screw around with the formula, and I broke Excel apparently because I'm technically I got all sorts of error messages. So I just thought I'd raise that. But that's what I figured, Eric. I just wanted to know. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so the reason is if you add that in, so it calculates at the bottom and you have two equivalent numbers, you get kind of a circular error.
Yeah.
Because you generate that number from the previous sheet, which then feeds this sheet, and it has no starting.
That's the error I got, and I was like, okay, this is beyond my abilities.
Right. That's why that is the way it is.
I was very, very confused, but now I'm good. All right, thanks. Yeah.
So we do have a motion in front of the board to adjourn.
Yeah, not yet. I have a question.
About the budget or about adjourning?
Yes.
So let's vote on the motion to adjourn.
Oh, okay.
Because we have it before the board, and we shouldn't be discussing other things if we're not going to adjourn.
Okay.
So any discussion about adjournment? All right, hearing none, we'll vote. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 Okay. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Okay, the meeting's adjourned. We'll continue the discussions. Make a note of your thoughts and questions, and we'll have to continue.